Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our latest episode of Healthspan Horizons. As always, my name is Melissa with my co-host here, Jasmine, and we are the pleasure of being here today with Laura from AthenaDAO. Laura, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be doing this call.
Yeah, I'm so glad we've been able to coordinate and line up with us. We've been counting down until we could tell everybody about your project and what you guys do. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. So, yay!
Yes, same here. It's been like months in the making.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I feel like it's kind of just how scheduling works, especially I feel like in Web3 projects in particular. It's like all of a sudden you're traveling and it's like 3 months down the road and then you finally get to connect. And so here we are crushing it today.
And all the women together.
Yes. Yes. It's not very often that we get to have a trio of women on here. So that's my first, not that I don't love interviewing dudes, but like it is my favorite when we get to girl chat about things that we're all passionate about, which is particularly the DeSci space. So excited to jump in. So I figure I'll get started with our first question, Laura, which is basically just tell me about yourself, how you came into founding AthenaDAO, et cetera, your background. And then after that, we'll get into AthenaDAO a little bit more, like what it is and everything like that.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. My name is Laura Minquini. I am the founder of AthenaDAO. And I started my career in something completely different. You mentioned, we're in decentralized science. I'm not a scientist by education or by trade even. I started my career in fashion, luxury fashion. I was an editor. Then I was a trend forecaster. I was working for companies like LVMH, Louis Vuitton, which is one of the biggest luxury groups. LVMH is the biggest luxury group in the world. And I was living in Paris at the time doing some of the go-to-market brand analysis. So I learned a lot about what drives consumer behavior. I learned a lot about how much money there is in consumer behavior, and that obviously women are a big driver of this. I had a really massive opportunity to launch a company while living in Europe. I call it getting my MBA in business, because I was able to bring what I knew from that side of building brands, go-to-market strategies, to launch a consumer tech company. And we were the first to do licensed products for Apple accessories. So we had all these fashion and design brands. I did that for quite some time, but at some point, my business partner wanted to go back to his original business, and I did not want to be selling any more of these products. I thought there are landfills out there where a lot of things that I produced over the years, let's face it, all of this stuff that we consume does end up in a landfill. So I wanted to do something that had more value and that had more impact. I was like looking for something that could fulfill a lot of check marks in terms of where would I want to spend the next decade or more. And by pure fluke, I volunteered my dog to retirement homes and hospitals. And I discovered how we age. I really called it that because I wasn't thinking about that then. And I was shocked because we're talking about innovation and all these things. And then you go to a retirement home and you see that we're aging the same way that we were aging 100 years ago in decay. They make jokes in the aging space about these homes are almost worse than jail, which to me felt that way because some people still had their mental capacity, but physically they couldn't do things anymore. So I did a whole market study on the age tech space. I'm like, no, this is not my jam. This is about keeping the status quo. I want to find a solution that allows me not to end up there. And that's how I discovered longevity biotech. Really got into it. The pandemic happens. I would say that I lucked out in the pandemic because I was in Clubhouse and I was fortunate enough to have the ear and the email replies from a lot of scientists and startup founders in the longevity biotech space. Like got to interview David Sinclair, George Church, like really big names in that space. And it was simply because people were on that social app. And if you were sending proper emails and had something to say, people would respond. So I thought, okay, this is where I want to make a difference. And that's where I meet the VitaDAO crew. which was the first decentralized science DAO. It launched like,
Yeah.
2020, I think it is now, 2021. It's been 4 years. And I meet them there. I write about them because I had a really large community that I had built for longevity, but the direct to consumer stuff. So I feature them a couple of times. They invite me to MC the first D-Side conference. And I was trying in Berlin, and I was trying to get some reproductive longevity projects past RejuveAI. They weren't paying attention. So I'm like, well, why don't you just go and do like a DAO for this? And that's the inception of AthenaDAO. So it's kind of like, now that I've told this story multiple times, it seems so obvious how everything happened. But it was, it just one thing led to the next in a way that I wanted things to go. And I'm so happy that I discovered women's health, because to me, it's a massively overlooked area. And I don't get it when I do the math, the fact that I come from the world of luxury and fashion, and I saw the numbers of what like a new product launch does for these brands. And I think women have so much capital. They just don't know that women's health is overlooked, because a lot of my friends don't know. It's like, why are you doing that? Are you sure it's a problem? And I think that when we're able to match the potential and the capital allocation that women bring to the table with this stream of research, which is massively overlooked and underfunded, there's just going to be like an insane moment. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. It's my lifelong mission now.
I love it. This is the awkward part where Jasmine and I like respond and we just go back and forth of who's going to talk. But so I'll say my sec first, and then she can pop in here. But I love that. I'm sure we're going to get more into this as we go. But I think that you mentioned that women don't realize that this is a problem, and it's because we're so used to it, right? Like we're used to doctors not listening to us many times about things that are bothering us, and it's just that's the status quo. It's so normal. And so it is crazy because who's has the most buying capital and things like that? Like you mentioned, it is women. My husband is not out here buying things for the house, buying his own clothes for the kids, shopping for literally anything, but yet nothing is really targeted specifically towards women. I don't understand. This whole society run by men is just a journey for me, but I'm sure we'll chat more about it. All right, Jasmine, go say what you were going to say.
Yeah, definitely. I guess just to go back a little bit before that, when you were talking about the kind of elderly care homes and things like that, like I actually remembered back to, my childhood, the first time I ever like went into a place like that, because my, family was working in these kind of places and whatnot. I was terrified. Like I thought I was in a horror film or something. Like it was like so traumatic. And yeah, the fact that, that's happening, that's kind of the fate of, for many people. That really resonated when you were talking about that, and the reason that we're really in longevity. And then when we start to break it down, the fact that most of historical medical research was on men, and you guys have this strong focus on elevating women's health, and that fact that you mentioned about the buying power and capital of women, I've never actually heard that before. Like it made so much sense when you said. I was like, wow, like light bulb moment, but I'd never just heard it put that way before.
Well, I try to use a lot of data when I talk to investors and funders and groups that still are not, don't see the potential. So I have to learn the fact, you look at all these data points and you tell them 80% of consumer spending is women and growing. And then 80% of the healthcare decisions at home are made by women. So I'm sure Melissa is the one sending her husband to, or her partner to the doctor. It's not him going on his own. She's the one deciding what vitamins the family is going to take. She's making sure that when your kids are probably sick, you make the decisions, going to the pediatrician, going to the doctor, the treatment, all of this, right? So we take care of the family, or we take care of, and then the stuff that comes to taking care of ourselves. It's just your hormones, darling. You're a woman. Right. You can take it. Don't take an epidural for having a baby. It's natural. You know what is natural? Also, men not being able to get it hard, but we figured it out. So
But where's the lie though, right? Man,
Yeah.
I I love it. And honestly, like I agree with you. I probably buy 100% of our household things and organize 100. Not that my husband is not really great at so many things that he does, but in terms of like organizing our life and women, that's just normal, right? Nobody really thinks about it. Like Jonathan said, like, well, moment to be like, yeah, we are actually in charge of this. We just need to like form a revolution where we can all band together and make it bigger impact and change, which is what you guys are doing. So will you dive into a little bit more of what AthenaDAO does in shaping women's health and changing the future for it?
So the biggest gap that we found in women's health was the funding part of it. Just for context, even in venture capital, women get less than 2% of capital allocation. So that's just if you're a woman founder. And let's just say that there can be also amazing researchers and founders in women's health that are men. Fully support that as well. However, the women's health category is almost non-existent in biotech. There's this thing called femtech, but a lot of it has been pigeonholed into medtech, digital labs, and what do you call medical providers? Like when you do, oh my God, I'm like blanking out on that, for being able to book in doctors and all of that, just online.
Yeah.
There's a name for it, but it's escaping me right now. What we're missing is hard science and biotech. And why is that the case? Because even at government level in research, the NIH has a $49 billion budget in 2022. Only 10% of that went to female specific conditions. That means that when we're researching something like Alzheimer's, we're still using male models, animal models, male patients, clinical data, all of this. That's what it means when female specific conditions means only things that would impact women that is specific to female biology. So what is the thing that's specific to female biology or reproductive health? That involves our ovaries or endometrium, all of that. So of 10% of that, only one goes to fertility. And of that, only 0.00 something goes to ovarian aging. And our ovaries play a huge role in our health. Not all women are going to have children, but absolutely all of us are going to go through menopause. And we have to decouple fertility and having children from the menopause part. It's like, we should think of it separately, because people think, why do you want to delay menopause? You don't want to have kids at 65. No, those hormones that we produce with our ovaries play a huge role in our health. In fact of matter, women are going to spend now a third of their lives postmenopausal, which means with more risk for osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases, and an array of other things that hormone factory stopping causes. So I don't want to scare anyone, and it's also natural, yes, but dying at 40 was natural. Not having a healthy heart was natural, and we managed to do heart transplants. Babies dying prematurely wasn't natural, and now we have incubators. So there's a lot of things that we've made that were natural that are not, that we made possible. Us talking here and people telling, being on social media natural. Well, if we didn't have science and progress, you would still be selling like smoke signs to people, because that's what was natural. So we need to get more options for women. And what AthenaDAO does is focus on funding translational research at labs. Our thesis is more translational research will lead to more data points. Both combined are going to lead to new assets and potential for new companies. That will lead to more investment into the space. Hopefully that will lead to eventually more therapeutics, diagnostics, and solutions for women, which will create a flywheel for the space to grow, and most importantly, for women to have options. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So by its own structure, it's not supposed to be hierarchical. We have working groups. You cannot have a flat organization, because somebody's going to have to take the onus at every step. So, we call them flat organizations. They are and they aren't, because, a group has to take the lead in making sure 24/7 something is happening with the DAO. But the cool thing about it and why I thought it was such a powerful mechanism is because you can be a funding organization, a community. So we have like about 10,000 members. And at the same time, also sort of like a research institute. We don't do the research ourselves, but we facilitate collaboration. We facilitate funding, and we also facilitate bringing the different stakeholders into play. So it's like 3 organizations into one. And I know sometimes it's very complicated for people to understand, well, that's too many things in one. It is and it isn't, because you can prioritize and you can deprioritize things at different stages. So since we founded AthenaDAO in August 2022, we've prioritized the science. We put a lot of focus on getting to reach out to scientists, do science and deal flow. We've had 4 cohorts, evaluated about 280 projects, have funded about $500,000 worth of research, and have a huge network now. Our next 2 years is prioritizing the community part, making women realize that women's health is an issue, because a lot of them don't know. And as you say, Melissa, we're used to hearing that, oh, well, it's just okay. You're a woman, so you can put up with it. And we shouldn't. We should demand as many options. We should have solutions. And it's about options. I am all for women that want to do yoga and oils and meditate for their menopause. They should fully be able to do that. But I also think that women should have more options than HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, which is the only option right now. We should have options and different treatments. And there are things like endometriosis that takes years to diagnose, and potentially a lot of surgical procedures. So this is not nice, because these are women that from their teenage years are living in pain. And if we were actually, I think McKinsey at the beginning of this year did a whole report on the impact of what happens if we invest more money into women's health. The economic output will increase in trillions, because when women are not healthy, their economic output goes down. And if women were not contending with all these health problems, they could work more, save more money, be more independent, have more money for retirement, all these things that we don't factor. Well, I don't even want to call it shopping, but financial independence and women's wealth should start to really equal men's independence and wealth. And we still have some ways to go. There's not as many female billionaires. And sadly, there's not as many female billionaires that made the money themselves. A lot of it is inherited or by husband. And this makes a big difference. We can say we've succeeded when the number of female billionaires are, not as much, but it's catching up to the men. Yeah. And it's women who did it by their work, because they were entrepreneurs themselves, not just and no offense to anyone who married into it or what was born into it, like good for them. But it's completely different, because the advantage is if a woman can succeed and get to the top that way, it does truly signal equality. To me, that's the most important part, that having that financial independence.
Agreed. I mean, I would love to marry into a billionaire situation, but so like get your bag, girl. But also at the same time, I mean, I agree. I think that there's so much room for improvement in terms of I'm going to call it a glass ceiling or whatnot, of where women can go in the future to be even remotely similar to men. So hopefully, maybe you guys will be, I mean, we'll see. Well, maybe we'll all be the next female billionaires, because we're just in the very beginning parts of DeSci, and it's going to take off really quick. So that's what we got.
Well, it's crazy. The last 2 weeks has been insane.
Yeah, it's been something else. And that, kind of goes into, maybe we talk a bit about DeSci itself, and how, this new kind of revolution enables women health to actually go forward and to, help to resolve these problems in a different way that the traditional scientific system has not done. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so decentralized science is a stream of the Web3 ecosystem. The one thing that has been very famous and it has, years already in the making is decentralized finance. So the dream of Web3 or crypto at the beginning was about being custodial of your own assets. Also, for some, the more libertarian ones was about accumulating whatever your wealth was, not necessarily having guardrails around it. But the bigger dream was also banking the unbanked, like in countries where banks require, developing countries where banks require so much for you to have a bank account. This was a way to start transacting. So imagine what our forebears were doing, where they were exchanging peanuts for like rice and all of this. In a way, we started doing this with digital assets. And it was a way to be an evolution of the financial system for multiple reasons. So decentralized science, what it's trying to change is the way science is done. And science by its nature is very close guarded, is very hierarchical. And I say now, I joke, I used to work in fashion and they say that people in fashion where I'm doing every conjugation. Our caddy, well, they haven't met people in science. If there's a movie, The Devil Wears Prada, there should be a movie called The Devil Wears a Lab Coat. And not because they're evil, but because it's so hierarchical, it's so competitive, it's so badly paid for those who don't make it to the top echelon. In publishing, getting grant money. So everything is tied to publishing. So if you're going to have your own lab and grant money, you have to publish. They call it publish or perish. But the publishing system is so rigged. It's just so insane how science works at the moment. Well, I mean, the biggest problem I find in science and research is obviously that women's health has been so massively overlooked. And the way DeSci works, there's different streams. The one we tackle is funding. There's projects for data. They use data, AI, all these different things like you guys are working on. The one that we work for is funding. And you can imagine, the analogy I make, it's like crowdsourcing, but using the blockchain mechanism. Crowdfunding, but using the blockchain mechanism. So anyone can become a community member. You can get our token, which is a governance token, which allows you to vote on where we allocate the funds. And then you're part of the community. And that way, why I thought it was so powerful was because we're a novel funding mechanism, and women's health needs novel funding mechanisms really badly. There's not enough funds out there. There are not enough opportunities in the women's health space. And this was just another addition to some of the things that are coming out to try to support the growth of the space. We try to look for IP or licensing on some of the scientific research because we're a regenerative system. So the whole point is that eventually we have an IP portfolio and something does make it to fruition to a company or to a therapeutic. So there's an upside for the DAO and all that money is put back into science. So that way we don't have to go and continually raise money, but you always have to continuously go raise money. However, the dream here is that one day through one of these projects, we're able to fund something from lab into a therapeutic through this ecosystem. And that's, for anyone who is curious about how it works, basically there are token holders, which are our community members, and the treasury you see in the blockchain when we fund the science. You see the transaction and people have actually more, you are able to access the researchers on the talks that we do, chats with them, and people have more of an up close view with what's going on with the science. I think the only thing that is tricky is that a lot of the science is like many years out and it's hard for people to relate to that. And we notice that for women, they're like, oh, that's nice, but can you tell me what to do for my IVF tomorrow? It's that's the only thing that gets tricky.
Yeah, actually, because I was wondering, when you were talking about menopause and all that, like, are there people, kind of living now that can, perhaps be alive when they actually can elongate or replenish and or prevent that and things of that nature. Now, of course, we don't want to think about people making it, not making it, all that kind of a thing, but it's more or less how close the technology actually is and how plausible it is. Like, is it reality? Is it fantasy? And I think that's kind of the conversations that have to be disseminated, from the science world into the public space, pretty much.
Well, it's funny because in the venture capital world, the more out there it is, the more they love it. So they are more excited about the artificial womb than they are about endometriosis. It's easier to raise money to do an artificial womb. And I love the artificial womb. In fact, like, I'm really big supporter of that. But I find it very interesting how moonshots are what is exciting to them rather than basic things like endometriosis. Let's solve this. This is like a real need today, like yesterday, like, decades, hundreds of years ago. And we have to constantly find that paradigm of making it exciting enough. I think having more solutions for menopause is a moonshot that we should focus on now. But it doesn't sound as sexy as an artificial womb. So that's what we always contend with being in the women's health space, because to the women's health people, sometimes you're too out there if you talk about the artificial womb. To the deep tech investors, you're not out there enough if you're dealing with endometriosis. So women's health is, I say that you have to be a masochist to work in the space or very driven to make it work.
Well, I was just thinking, I was like, what would that moonshot, erectile dysfunction, I'm sure would be a huge moonshot that everyone wants to go and magically fix. But endometriosis just sounds like I get it. Unfortunately, I understand that those type menopause, endometriosis, PCOS, none of that stuff sounds enticing to want to talk about. But an artificial womb, snazzy. It's got little bells and whistles.
Stopping menopause means like forever beautiful ladies, right? Like, we just don't age and just look like. Yeah.
But I think it's so frustrating because there's so much like negative connotation associated, I feel like, with menopause, that like, we don't talk about that. We don't really want to talk about the uncomfortable factors of women's health. And that's a huge barrier for it. It's like, you talk to a man about menopause, like, I've watched some TikTok videos of girls trying to even just talk about women's body parts, or even things like what sizes of tampons are there, or things like that. I was like, I have no idea. They have no idea. And it's just like, oh yeah, menopause, that sounds gross. Yeah, we're not going to worry about that.
Well, I mean, for context, Mid-Journey bans ovaries. You cannot make, how you can put input, can you make me an image in this and include like that, XYZ? Ovaries is not allowed.
Really?
And do they allow the other one?
Double check if it's now allowed. But when we try, I think one of them had changed, but there was ovaries and something else that weren't allowed from women's biology. And to me, that's shocking, because our bodies are still regulated by laws in a lot of places. And it's almost like we don't have ownership of our own body. And also anything that has to do with the female biology is regarded as things that you're not able to express, because why? It's icky, is it gross?
They don't want to know.
Yeah.
They're supposed to just keep up these goddess-like image like 24/7, 368.
We all just naturally wake up looking like this, and yeah. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I think, Laura, basically what I'm disseminating from your thing is basically AthenaDAO, or DAO in general, allows average women, men, whoever, to get involved in women's health without having to be a scientist or a researcher and things like that. So we and our community can essentially purchase your token and have a say in where funding goes. Is that a general summary?
Yes. And I also want to say that you don't have to have a token to get involved in the community. You can also become a contributor. If you're a researcher, a scientist, somebody working data science, if you're passionate about femtech, women's health, science, anything that could touch like computational biology, AI, you can still join our community. There's so many opportunities in trying to direct research and technology into this area. It's kind of a blue sky. So a contributor also can collect tokens themselves. That's how they get, a thank you for the contribution. So the community is double-sided in the sense that you don't have to quote unquote buy, but you can also contribute and still be part of the community. We have a newsletter that has a lot of women there that are not necessarily into crypto, which we love. We have a lot of people in our Discord, which is where Web3 kind of meets, and that are mostly men, but they're passionate, like interested about this. I think the fun thing about this kind of organizations is that they're open, and there are many ways in which you can be part of them that is not necessarily a buy-in or just contributing. Or the bigger thing is that it's also open, right? So you will know what we're doing. There's a lot of more transparency. I think one big thing that I remember meeting somebody very early on, he was very passionate about doing things in this space because I don't, ALS, right? Remember that bucket? So there was a big controversy with that because they raised so much money, but such little money went to research. A lot of it was spent on the president of the foundation going around in private jets to promote the whole thing. This is what I heard was the controversy, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to justify to anyone how the funds are spent in some of these traditional legacy foundations. And with us, because it's in the blockchain, you can actually see who's moving what where, and you can actually know if the money is going into science. So that's a really interesting part too, is that it's not thank you for giving us the funds and see you later. Is, well, here it is what we're doing with them. And here you can see that they had impact or not. So in many ways, we have a lot of things to prove in this ecosystem because it's quite new. But as I say, time will tell. And hopefully the tell is going to be that this mechanism has success in being able to get something to market that can actually make a difference in a woman's life or in the other categories that are in the space.
I know I keep interrupting and not letting Jasmine ask her questions because I think of something. So here's my one, and then I'll let you do it, Jasmine. Can you, you said that you had raised like 500,000 that had gone to various researchers. Can you talk about what some of your, I guess, your proudest ones or things that you guys have been funding in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I guess that was where I was really going to. Like,
okay, perfect.
No, we raised more than we raised more than that. Like we raised 1 million, but only half has gone to, and this is all crowdfunding.
Right, half has gone to. Okay,
so
gotcha.
Half has gone to science. We have 2 intellectual property sponsor research agreements already. A couple of other. We have 10 fellowships, 1 summit, and about 5 more grants from the 500,000. So what's really exciting is the 2 IP NFTs are tagged, what you call IP NFT, which is the sponsor research agreements. They're both in ovarian aging, and they're both looking at targets for dealing with menopause. Oh. So, we found on our cohort for endo and picos, it was very hard to find something that we could fund because most of the projects still require massive amounts of capital. Our check size is between $50,000 to $150,000, which is very little for science. Most of these projects in PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and endometriosis, they're longitudinal studies that we need, that science badly needs, but we're talking about millions of dollars here. So our treasury does not allow for that kind of funding yet. But obviously there are some areas of science that have more low-hanging fruits. And unfortunately, we're not a granting mechanism where we can just give the money away for free. We are a funding mechanism. We're trying to find things that could have obviously something with an outcome so that the DAO can have an upside and continue the flywheel. In the end, I don't like to be called a venture fund or anything that
Accelerator
close
as
to
a
that, because we don't have returns to LPs, like a venture fund is much different. And the other thing is that VCs cannot invest, quote, fund science. There's no verticals, science at a lab is not going to have a 3x, 10x, 100x. It will maybe one day, but not at the lab because it's not a company. There's no like, oh, let's keep looking. It just works differently. VCs can only fund companies that will have potentially an exit or an outcome that will return funds to the VC. I mean, it's a business and it has to be a company. We are before that. So we obviously love to partner with organizations that take the next stages. So from venture capital firms to accelerators to incubators that are focused in the area, because what we call ourselves is science first. And our mandate is to make sure everybody understands how important it is to fund science for us to actually get more therapeutics and solutions for women to market. I don't even know if I answered that question because I feel like I went on a tangent there, but I hope I did.
I think you did in general. So basically you're the grants and summits and fellowships and things like that kind of just go to facilitate. There isn't one in particular. I agree. And there's the system in science, I feel like is very backwards. Like, to be honest, why does it cost millions of dollars to do research? As not a scientist, I'm like, that just feels crazy to me. But it honestly is. It's like these type of longitudinal studies that you're taking 10 or 20 years to follow women with PCOS, like it takes some coin, and it is frustrating to watch that be necessary in order for research to actually happen. It feels like such a huge barrier.
Well, I mean, there's a whole stream of people in DSI, and that's part of it, that there must be better ways to do science, because there are a lot of researchers and scientists now that have quantified and done the math. It's that we're spending more money on research and biotechnology now than we were 30 years ago, but the output and the returns are much lower. So there's a problem, because you were able to do R&D in a much cost effectively. But I think part of it has to do with the same problem as the healthcare system. I heard an obscene amount that 70% about it now of the cost is admin and bureaucracy. So we're talking about at hospitals in the US, so many administrators are taking their cut that by the time somebody pays for like having a baby is $10,000 or whatever it is, I mean, I don't know the amount, but I know that administrative costs in the US are huge. And that's a huge problem right now, that we're paying for admin, not the actual value, which is providing the health help for the patient.
Yeah. Jasmine, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah. I mean, like, clearly we know that these, things exist, and that's why we're trying to build solutions to actually do something about it. And that's kind of what gives me like hope and inspiration, about our generation and everything, is that we're like really out here doing it. And it sounds like, or feels like, a revival of something that, we've heard about back in like, the 70s or whatever the movements are. And it's like, we're part of, the super powerful thing. So it's exciting. And so I guess maybe my last one would be, in an ideal world, how would you like to see the impact of AthenaDAO on women's health research and global healthcare? Like, what do you want to be known for? Like, what's the goal?
So the goal is to have the first pharmaceutical company focused on women's health, because that does not exist. That's like, the moonshot. Spinning out of AthenaDAO, not necessarily AthenaDAO itself, but that something like that comes out, because, coming from the fashion and luxury world, there are 3 companies that I can think of: Estee Lauder, Mary Kay, and Helena Rubinstein, which were founded by women in times where women did not have companies. They're huge beauty companies, and they were all founded because Either the women were ignored, they needed it, or they just thought, okay, a combination of both. And I think this is fully possible in the women's health category, aiming for that. And that's why, in a way, if we can actually fund more science and there's more IP, eventually there's going to be more opportunities to develop that. Just for context, I would say less than 70% of the pharma companies in the world have a women's health strategy. What does that mean? That there's no R&D going specifically for this vertical. I mean, we make half of the world's population, and you go to some of them and they don't have a women's health strategy. I understand why they don't, because there's not enough assets to develop. Pharma companies want to come in at like $300 investments, and they are willing to spend the money on running clinical trials, but they need to see the assets. So the problem of why they don't do this is because there are not enough assets. There are not enough companies that can get to that $300 million mark. There's a huge gap. And that has to do with the fact that we're not funding the science. Women don't need more digital tools. They need actually therapeutics. They need diagnostics. And all of this comes from science. I mean, biomarkers, digital biomarkers are great. But at some point, you're going to need to collect tissue and you're going to need to collect blood, none of which we have. And I say this for AI. AI for drug discovery is also going to suck for women because we don't have the data. There's a huge data gap. And I'm sorry, no algorithm is going to be able to compute without the data. It can be very powerful, but if you don't have the data, what is it going to compute on? So we really need to put the pressure on being able to get more of this stuff done, because again, we're not, the era of AI and medicine is here. And again, women's health is going to be left behind simply because of a huge data gap.
I mean, I do feel like women in Web3 are kind of uniting, so that's kind of cool to see. I mean, I know it's still a bit of a subculture, I guess, but it's one that is growing. I mean, especially now, within the past couple of weeks, we've seen what's happening with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and possible changes in U.S. and everywhere. And yeah, so I just feel like this is a really opportune moment that we can finally bring some light to this, and we're in that position now as having come into and seen how it started and where we are now, that we can actually start to contribute meaningfully to the direction.
Yeah, well, I mean, so for context, I'm not sure when the podcast is coming out, but it's the 20th of November, and the last 2 weeks have been insane. So you have to see the great things and everything. And whether you like Trump or not, the fact that he got elected is created a huge new boost into the ecosystem, not only crypto, but also the financial markets. They just became optimistic about their future. So people started, I mean, you have to look at what do you call it? The silver lining of things, right?
Yeah.
So the silver lining, if you're pro-Trump, like, yay. If you're not pro-Trump, still yay. You have to look at the right things. You have to look at the good things to try to get through the bad ones. And if you're going to look at that, you're going to say it's really done a massive boost to the market. DeSci became a thing all of a sudden also. And I say became a thing because what we're seeing in the last 2 weeks has nothing to do with what was happening in the last 2 years. It's now the new current thing. I'm not sure how long it's going to last, but we're very happy about it. And we're going to try to go as fast and as far as we have. We have a lot of scientific research to fund. So I'm very excited about it because there's a lot that we can do during this time. We're ready with a lot of that. And the market is responding. So we're super excited. And I think one thing that I keep thinking of is that the last time people were excited about Web3 was during the pandemic. And a lot of women came into the space. And I really hope that a lot of women come into the space during this now new rally. And I hope that they come also through AthenaDAO, because for me, the big thing has always been crypto school. but we're not giving women a reason to be here. The NFTs with the rocks was not going to be it. So I hope that women's health, something that matters to all of
The
us,
frog, you know.
could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're like the meme coins and all that are funny and fun. It's just, I don't know if it's for everyone, but what we're doing is for good. And I hope that that speaks to a lot of women, because we're also very, you know, we try to get them involved in a way that's meaningful and impactful for them, because women need a lot. Women are more analytical, and they're actually better investors because they really look at everything more carefully. So we want to make sure that when they come, they feel in a place that they don't think, what is this like crazy stuff? And they know that what we're doing is serious and legitimate.
Laura, I feel like I cannot believe we're already at 45 minutes. I feel like this is blown by today. I also feel like I can go burn the patriarchy down now, and we can seize the day for that
day. I mean, I love the guys, you know, like I think it's
yes,
more women getting together to build networks. One thing that
to
I've
realize,
noticed is that men are very good at just helping each other. They have their own way of being competitive, but they'll help each other on deals, passing things, and women need to
they'll
become,
bro out. Yeah.
yeah, well, we need to girl out or something, you know, we need to find the equivalent
Yeah.
of bro, but for women. It really needs to happen. That's the way to like really make a difference.
I think it's one of those things of like, there's room for everyone at the table. I think gets said a lot, especially with women, of like, I don't know what it is about women being innately competitive or concerned that if I succeed or if they're succeeding, I can't succeed too. And that's definitely not the case, especially in the women's health space. It's like the more women that get involved and the more that
Yeah, the more
participate
that
and
we all
contribute, the higher and more successful the whole field is in itself. So I guess we got to wrap this up, but you guys were doing some pop-ups in the last few months. Are you guys doing anything like that in the upcoming weeks that our listeners can catch you guys at, or what's your plan in the next little bit?
So we did an 80 Labs pop-up in San Francisco for the month of October, and that was like our test bed for consumer biotech products. So we feature a bunch of brands that came from labs. We really wanted to make sure that people understood that the research can lead to actual products. And we are going to do more in the new year. The location, it's either going to be London or New York. And stay tuned for that. What we're asking people is to join our community right now. There's a lot of things going on because everybody's excited about DeSci. We have a lot of new projects that we're launching. So love to see more women get involved and hopefully meet some of them either in New York and London the next year. We're going back to San Francisco at the end of the month, but it's like a 2-hour pop-up at an event there for Foresight Institute. So look out. Join our newsletter, join the Discord, whatever you feel comfortable with. We don't only do Web3, we do Web2, we do in person. So if you join our newsletter, everybody can keep abreast of where we are going and our latest events, because we also host breakfast in different cities with our different communities and attend conferences. You know, we really go out there and preach the word of DeSci and women's health.
awesome.
I love it. We'll have to try and meet up with you guys whenever you do your next one.
Yes, we can co-host an event.
Yes.
I would love that. Would love that. All right.
Well,
all right.
Thank you so much for having me. This
Thank
was
you
fun.
so much for coming on, Laura. This was so great. And I feel like we really just scratched the surface. I feel like there's so much more I feel that we can talk about in this space, but I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. Thank you guys all for listening, and we'll see you on our next episode.